Going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of The Standard is the Standard. You know what that means. We're gearing up for another week of football, although it's hard to believe. I mean, it's kind of disheartening after you get your butts shellacked on Sunday Night Football 33-3 by the New England Patriots. But here we are. It's week 2. Lance, the sky has not fallen yet. How are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling great. I mean, I took a look at the game film. There's some positives. There's definitely some negatives,
It's
but
rough.
it's not as bad, I think, as people probably think. It's not, so it's probably somewhere in the middle. It's not that the Patriots were the Wizard of Oz and they did all this stuff, and it's some mistakes. There's some early season stuff that you could really see.
Okay, and so we'll get into all that in detail. But first, we started off with our guest. This is something we're going to be doing every week, or try to do every week, and that is bringing a guest on from the SB Nation website that the Steelers are going to be playing. So this week, we head over to the Field Gulls. It's the SB Nation Vox Media website for the Seattle Seahawks. And Brandon Shulze joins us. Brandon, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
We appreciate you coming on. And this is interesting because we, as Steeler fans, don't know a lot about the Seahawks. There is a history. We all remember Super Bowl 40. I'm pretty sure.
I'm glad you brought it up within the first 2 minutes. That's nice work.
Sorry, I don't know what to say. Are they still sour about that up in the Great Northwest?
I don't think that it's as much sour towards Steelers or Steelers fans. Just the officiating in that game, still sour about that. But when you win a Super Bowl, you kind of get over it. But then you have another moment against the Steelers that everybody talks about, and you have that to deal with too. So you and I can, at least now, we have a common hatred toward the Patriots that we can share together.
Yes, it's a common bond. Now, is the main beef with the officiating in Super Bowl 40 the push off?
Was the push off. I think, didn't Matt Hasselbeck trying to make a tackle get called for some kind of weird penalty?
Oh, he did. I remember that now. Yes.
And then there was a holding penalty on our right tackle on one of the touchdowns too. That was kind of a phantom holding call. There was just too many that it got to be a little nauseating.
And then, of course, the Ben Roethlisberger did the football get over the line challenge was called, which it did, but that's okay. Lance was. I don't think Lance remembers that game. I think he was drunk, right, Lance?
No. I was drunk after the game. That was a weird experience. Like, I have a really good friend. She's from New York and Seattle. She's from Seattle area, went to high school in Seattle. She's a huge Seahawk fan. So we had special seats in the house that we went to. So there was a Steelers seat. She had her Seattle seat. We didn't have to get up the whole game. People were like bringing us food. We were like the guests of honor. And I had one lady that irritated me the entire game. Just the Steelers are going to lose. The Steelers are going to lose. And I'm just telling her, like, don't joke with fans during the Super Bowl. Like, if we lose, you can give me the business after the game, but not during the game. So I end up missing chunks of that game because I was so upset with her that I just went outside to my car. I just was kicking rocks, throwing stuff because I was just juiced up and pissed off. But I was happy that they won, and I was taking shots afterwards.
Well, hey, one for the thumb. That was a great one. So let's get into the upcoming game in week 2. The Seahawks are coming off a game where they've held on to beat out the Bengals. I watched a lot of that game. It's definitely interesting on both ends. And Andy Dalton has a career day against that defense. That's my first question. Is this Legion of Boom 2.0? Because we know almost all those pieces have kind of been taken away. Earl Thomas is gone. Sherman's gone. What's your take on the defense as it stands right now heading into week 2, and what should Steeler fans expect?
Well, Legion of Boom 2.0 would suggest that there is some kind of improvement over Legion of Boom 1.0. So I think we need to maybe roll back to like 0.05, 0.06, somewhere we're in the neighborhood there, because it's definitely shaping up to be a different team. And I feel like now with the addition of Jadeveon Clowney, and you have the linebackers with KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, Michael Kendricks, it feels like it's a much more front seven focused team. And so I think as Seahawks fans, when we were kind of expecting, with a lot of the injuries on the Bengals offensive line, that they were really going to get a lot more pressure on Andy Dalton, that he wouldn't have time to really pick apart the defense. But one thing that I've also come to find out is that the Seahawks, when quarterbacks go and have those career type days against this team, 400 plus yards, the Seahawks actually win all of those games. So they make a team one dimensional, much like the Patriots did with the Steelers, right? They made you guys one dimensional in that game. Not a whole lot of rushing yards. You have to go through the air. And when the Seahawks do that to another team, they end up having a lot of success.
That you bring up a good point, because I remember Ben went nuts up in Seattle a couple years ago, probably threw for
that was a great game,
or close to 400, and of course Russell Wilson, I think, threw for 5 touchdown passes.
That was the game. That was the game where Ben took himself out of the game for concussion protocol. He pulled himself out of that game, if you remember, and Landry Jones came in. So that's why they lost
right toward the end.
That sounds.
I don't know if that's why they lost. They scored a few points.
That sounds like Ben. Well, let me get to my theme. And typically on the show, I didn't do it last week because a lot of times I try to frame my stuff just around a riddle or a rhyme. We used to call it my Nipsey Russell isms. Dating myself, as you can clearly see. My theme just was this: when I was watching the game, if the Steelers want to get to 1-1, somehow you have to stop the run. You saw a lot of Chris Carson, a lot of Rashard Penny used in a variety of different ways. Is the game simply, in terms from a defensive perspective from the Steelers, does it simply come down to that? If you can really neutralize the Seattle Seahawks run game, you give yourself a great opportunity to win.
Well, actually, where I would say the Steelers have the best chance at winning against the Seahawks is where they can take a page from the Bengals, and that's being really strong up the middle. And we saw with Geno Atkins, he really had he took advantage of Justin Britt in this game and was coming up the middle. And so whether it was a run play, whether it was a pass play, they were into the backfield early on. And we saw a couple series where guys are either getting tackled or Russell Wilson's getting sacked, and you end up in 3rd and long type plays. And when the Seahawks get into 3rd and 17 plus, they're gonna run a give up play. They're gonna either toss it out to a back or run it up the middle and say, okay, we're gonna give up on this drive and we're gonna go at it again. And it does result in a lot of 3 and outs, especially if you have penalties, anything that's backing up the team on those 1st and 2nd downs. So that's where I would think that the Steelers would have the opportunity. Stopping the run, it does. Pete Carroll is not shy about the fact that he wants to run the football, and so I think the Bengals focused on that as well. But when you're focused on running the football, you also have to stop the big plays down the field, and that's the one thing the Bengals didn't do.
Let me hit on that, Jeff. Let me ask a follow-up question. Because when I looked at the game, I thought when the Bengals had success stopping Carson and Penny and getting Seattle into some obvious passing situations, as you were saying, they really got after Russell Wilson. And I thought they rushed him very intelligently as well by not letting him get outside the pocket and thus not rushing past him. 4 sacks, 9 quarterbacks hits. Is that a bad game? Is that an aberration? Or is this an offensive line you think the Steelers could take advantage of?
I think it's something that as Seahawks fans we saw a lot last season. They had these types of games where Russell Wilson would get sacked, he'd get hit, he wouldn't have a lot of attempts, but it's because of those explosive plays downfield that allows him to keep in the games. And so if you're still allowing Russell Wilson to go deep a few times a game and give up an easy touchdown over the middle like they did with the Tyler Lockett touchdown, we saw a big game out of DK Metcalf, the rookie. And so I think it's not really so easy as focusing on one thing or another, but if you can stop the run and limit the big plays, then that's really the way to stop the Seahawks. And then on offense for the Steelers, what you have to do is you have to be efficient inside the red zone, because one thing that, although the Seahawks are giving up quite a few yards, they did last season, but what they tend to be strong at is limiting points inside the red zone for other teams. So if you're only getting field goals and coming away with those, then it's going to be a long day. The Bengals were 0-3 inside the red zone getting touchdowns. They had to kick 2 field goals. Andy Dalton fumbled, and that's really where they had. If they come away with more than a field goal in any of those situations, then they're going to win the game. And that's really where if I were the Steelers, I'd be focusing on, what can we do to make sure we come away with 7 inside the red zone?
That's interesting. I asked our live chat and people that are there, and they've been talking this entire time in that chat room, if they had any questions, and I'm going to throw a couple at you as we get them. So Kevin, I'll put this up on the screen there. He says, do you think this is going to be a high scoring or a low scoring game? And so I'll let you answer that question in your personal opinion.
One of the I'm so used to seeing the Seahawks playing games where it's kind of the first team to 20 points ends up winning the game. So that I wouldn't say that's really high scoring or low scoring. It's kind of in between. And that's probably where it's going to be for this game. If the Seahawks are able to play the game that they want to play and limit the running game for the Steelers and keep them from scoring touchdowns.
I do have a question about Russell Wilson. He got that monster contract, and the Seahawks fans have to be happy that they're keeping their franchise quarterback. Other than DK Metcalf, I mean, who are some of the weapons that he has just to kind of give Steeler fans an idea as to, when they're watching the game on Sunday, like who are these guys? I mean, I can't say that they're household names, but who are some of his favorite targets to go to?
Tyler Lockett would be the number one target with Doug Baldwin leaving this offseason, retiring, and he was injured, so he ended up being waived from the team. But Tyler Lockett, he's going to be the number one go-to guy. You have DK Metcalf, the rookie, and then Jerron Brown's kind of the guy that he would go to inside the red zone. He had 5 touchdowns last year. Will Dissly is their tight end who's coming off injury. He was a rookie last season, got injured just after 4 games, and he's been kind of a pleasant surprise early last year. And he actually had a knee injury in this game against the Bengals, but it looks like he's going to be coming back from that to play this Sunday. So those are probably the more common ones. Nick Vannett, another one of the tight ends that Russell Wilson looks to go to. And then a lot of the other receivers are rookies that we may not see much of in this game. They only suited up 4 wide receivers in this last game against the Bengals. So that was a little bit surprising.
Go ahead, Lance, if you have a question.
When you look at Russell Wilson, you look at how he utilizes play action, and play action is one of his most deadly weapons. You see how the Pittsburgh Steelers struggled in that first game against the Patriots when it came to play action. How do you think that will turn out, and how do you think that will look in this game? Do you think Seattle will really be able to take advantage of some deficiencies that the Steelers showed in their play action defense last Sunday?
Well, it's going to be interesting because I think from what I understand, too, you guys had one of your more veteran safeties that was out of the game against the Patriots. And
Sean Davis was out.
Yeah, and so the Patriots really took advantage of that particular matchup. Now, if he's going to be back in the lineup against the Seahawks, that might help you guys out a little bit in this week 2 matchup. But that play action is something that the Seahawks rely on, and they have Chris Carson, they have Rashad Penny, even CJ Prosise, who we didn't see at all in this first game. He's been a guy that when they've gone on the road, he played in New England. He had a huge game a couple of years back against New England, and he's just never been able to really get in the game and play due to injuries. But from all accounts, he's healthy now, so it'll be interesting to see if that's one of those guys who pops up to where you go, CJ Prosise, who's this guy? Catching passes down the field from the running back spot. And that could be a guy they look at too. So how do you guys feel about the play action matchup on your end? Because is that something that where you look at and you say, well, you just have a rookie playing safety, or is that a potential issue with the linebacking core too?
Well, I wrote a text to Jeff, I think earlier today. I can't find it now. I won't look, but I think I said to the effect, if Sean Davis doesn't play on Sunday, they might be in big trouble. Just given because it's a combination of things. It's you put Barron and you put Bush and you put Kelly, 3 guys that are essential in how you defend the play action. 2 guys that are fairly new, at least playing inside and together with Bush and Barron and with Kelly. that, you're going to absolutely try to take advantage of those three players in play action. So I think the Steelers need Sean Davis to play in this game to kind of stabilize that. But speaking of a defensive player, and this might echo into something that Jeff may want to ask you in terms of the offense. What was your assessment of Jadeveon Clowney? How did he play in this first game? And how do you think what will his impact, in your opinion, be in this game?
I think that he has the potential to have an even bigger impact than he did against the Bengals, because they were really playing him limited snaps. I think he had maybe 20 snaps in the first half when the Bengals, they had the possession of the ball for a majority of the first half, and then they limited him. He didn't play quite as much in that second half. But you saw him, if he was matched up against a tight end, they were really having struggles blocking Clowney. He had a sack as Dalton was trying to run out of bounds. He had a batted pass. So he made his presence known on the defensive line. And that was actually, other guys who maybe you haven't heard of that had even bigger days. Quentin Jefferson had 2 sacks against the Bengals. Al Woods, he had a batted pass and a fumble recovery. And he was known just and a guy who was in the backfield stopped a 4th and 1 by the Bengals, and Clowney came up with a big run stop too. So why Dalton had all this time to throw and put up big numbers. It was interesting because there were guys on the defensive line that actually had some pretty good numbers too, including Clowney.
It was a strange game. Like when I watched that game, it was just one of those weird games. You're trying to get a feel for what's it was. It was a lot of ebb and flow. Like one team would get the momentum, and then someone would make like Dalton would fumble, or it was a very typical Week 1 game is how I would describe it. It just didn't look very
a typical early season game for the Seahawks too. Just all the time you get so frustrated as a fan, going, I know this team can be better than this. But then they come out and they pull out the win in the end. So I am concerned though. The Seahawks in September, it's not a good record when they're going on the road. They've only won 1 game outside of the 2013 Super Bowl season. They are 1-10 with Russell Wilson at quarterback in September on the road. So that stat worries me a lot.
Okay, well, here's a question from the live chat. Brandon asked, and I think this is a good one. It's a 2-parter. He said,
I like his name. Spells it wrong.
Is there a Steeler on offense or defense that scares you as a fan? And is there a Seahawk that Steeler fans should be on the lookout for? I think in terms of the Seahawk, he's thinking of maybe someone that you haven't heard of. But clearly, Russell Wilson would be at the top of the list.
Yeah, Bobby Wagner, another one of those guys that you've heard of.
Yeah. So is there any Steelers that Seahawk fans are kind of like, we got to watch out for this guy?
Oh, yeah. Well, TJ Watt, obviously, right?
If he's healthy, he's got a hip injury. We'll see.
If he's healthy, you have the new linebacker Bush. I'm kind of excited to see him because there's such high expectations that here's going to be the guy that's going to come and be the guy at linebacker for the Steelers. So I'm interested to see him. Schuster, probably a guy who's I would expect would have a pretty good game. They're going to match him. I would think they're going to try and match him up against Trey Flowers, although he plays in the slot a lot too. And one of the issues that the Seahawks have had, the guy that they started in the slot against the Bengals, he came away with a shoulder injury. They end up signing Jamar Taylor for Week 2. And I'm not super excited about Taylor based on what I saw from the preseason. So it could be a big day for Schuster. A guy Steelers fans may not know of the Seahawks in that secondary is Bradley McDougald. And he's probably, if I had a guy to pick to say he's going to be a potential Pro Bowler, it would be McDougald. He was the leader in interceptions apart from Earl Thomas last year before he went out last year. And he's just always been kind of that. He's the most veteran safety we have now with so many young guys on defense for the Seahawks. So he's kind of one of the under the radar guys that I'd maybe watch out for as a Steelers fan.
You mean the Seahawks aren't afraid of Ryan Switzer?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's a joke. That's just kind of like an inside joke because I really don't like Ryan Switzer as a ball player.
Put
So
Deontay Johnson into his reps. That's what I say. Let the young rookie play. Let him go out there. But we'll see. Lance, you have any other questions before we get a prediction from this guy or what?
no, great information. Thank you.
Absolutely. So here's the betting line. We are not degenerate gamblers, but we do like to talk about gambling. So the betting line as of now, this is the last that I've seen. It could have changed, and depending on the sports book that you check, it could be different. Currently, the Steelers are giving the Seahawks 3.5 points with the over-under set at 46.5. So we like to get your prediction not only for who you think is going to win straight up, do they cover or do they win the money line, and then also over under. What are your thoughts on the game on Sunday?
46. Gosh, those actually seem like really solid bets. I would maybe go for the under just because it's week 2 and because the Steelers only scored 3 points in week 1. That's just me taking my digs while I can. Since you got the Super Bowl thing in there right away.
Yeah.
I do think, right around a 24-20 type game would be about right. And when I look at the fact that the Seahawks, if I had to bet my own money on this, I would probably say the Seahawks are going to lose this game again, 1-10 outside of 2013 with Russell Wilson on the road. But it's also going to be close, right? Because of those 10 losses, I went back and looked at only 3 of those games were 8 to 10 points. So everything else, 7 of those games were a touchdown or less, and 2 of those were by a field goal. So I really do think that, about a 4-point difference, and it's going to come down to if the Seahawks defense can make a stop in the fourth quarter, or if Russell Wilson can march him down the field and score a go-ahead touchdown inside the fourth quarter. This game is going to be close inside the fourth quarter because that's the way Pete Carroll always plays it. He doesn't care if he's behind going into the fourth quarter. He just knows that he needs the team to have an opportunity to score inside that fourth quarter. So I would probably, you said 3.5 for the line.
Yes.
I'd say it's probably going to be 4 points, and just based on the history, a 4-point loss.
All right, so you would take the Steelers, giving the points and straight up. So I can't thank you enough for joining the show and taking the time. I hope that the Seahawks do well this season after week 2. I hope that I've honestly, when we play NFC West teams or NFC teams in general, unless it's the Cowboys, it's like, hey, hope everyone stays healthy. Hope you guys have a good year. I have no beef with Seahawks fans.
I haven't even gotten a thank you yet for beating the Bengals in week 1. Jeez.
Well, they're the Bengals.
Yes, they're the Bungles, in fact. So thank you for beating the Bungles.
They will take care of themselves. If you guys beat the Baltimore Ravens, then you'll get a thank you.
Okay.
But all right, so Brandon, thank you very much. You check out Field Goals and check out their podcast over. You guys do multiple shows a week? Well, what's your layout over there in case someone wants to check them out?
Yeah, we do. We do about 3 shows a week at fieldgoals.com. And recap show after the game, preview show. I have Dave on and that'll probably be launching tomorrow morning. So check that out.
All right, yeah, Dave Schofield, deputy editor. All right, Brandon, thanks you very much for the time, and good luck this Sunday.
All right, guys, you too.
See ya. All right, Lance, there you have it. He thinks the Steelers are going to win. That kind of scares me a little bit. I don't know. I mean, you get guys from other teams thinking that their team's going to lose. It's not always a good thing. But still, here's the thing. I've been following the live chat this whole time. And the live chat's just been, oh my gosh, everyone's talking about last week. Look, the one thing I told myself when we were coming into this show is that if we were going to mention last week's game, because we recapped all of it on the post-game show. If you want to hear Lance and my knee-jerk reactions, go back and listen to that. That's exactly what it is. But in terms of this game, the only time I want to talk about last week is if it's in a reference to how it could change this week. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
We just got to turn the page. Everyone's talking about Moncrief and the coaches suck. Look, it's one game. There's still 15.
Moncrief.
Is that his name now? Moncrief? Is that what we're calling him?
Yes, not Moncrief. Moncrief.
Okay, so that's it. If you're asking a question about last week, I'm not going to answer it, period. We're not answering it. We want to focus on this upcoming game against the Seahawks because, in my opinion, if the Steelers win this week, and we'll give our predictions at the end of the show, I think you're fine. You're 1-1. Yes, you lost to an AFC team, but you've righted the ship, and that's the headline. The headline of this episode is: Can the Steelers right the ship against the Seahawks? I got to be honest. I have not watched, outside of watching the actual game last Sunday. I have not watched the film of the Seahawks. I really don't know much about this team. Lance, you said you've seen the offensive game film, correct?
No, I just watched the game. I watched the game a couple of times. No, I didn't break them down.
Okay.
I took a look at the all 22 for the Steeler game.
Gotcha.
But
that had to be tough. I watched the first quarter and said that's enough.
You know, like when I watch game film afterwards, it's not really tough. It's really educational. So
it is. No, it is. I learned a lot. I learned a lot watching it on Game Pass. So
you know, I get a sense of what it helps me do is to recenter what I thought I saw, and I report on Sundays. You know, did I see what I thought I saw? And I saw some things that I thought I saw, but I also saw some things that I didn't. But you're going to laugh at this, Jeff. I just realized I can see the live chat and the live comments. Don't laugh. I thought that was just. I thought that was our comments.
No,
but
you
it's
mean
actually
the constant scroll of comments on the right side of our screen.
Did that, but I never looked because I saw private chat and I saw. Okay, so now I can see, you know, everybody in the live chat giving the comments.
Okay, so here's my question. I wrote a couple articles today. I was able to take the time and look at the snap totals from last week, and there was a couple really interesting numbers for me. Like, for instance, Dante Moncrief, as you call him, he played 90% of the snaps. That was equal time as Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, I got it, and I went to the comment section. I shouldn't have. It's can be rough in there, and people were saying that this was a knee-jerk reaction because I suggested not that they bench Moncrief because I think that's a little bit too much. It's week 2. But at the same time, I'm looking at it and saying, I would like to see these numbers outside of people named Juju Smith-Schuster, who should be playing a lot, and Johnny Holton, who shouldn't be playing a lot. Everyone else should be pretty even. And that's Deontay Johnson, that's James Washington, that's Dante Moncrief. And a lot of people were saying, oh my gosh, you know, they get Moncrief, it's too early, blah, blah, blah. I want to see more of what other people can provide, and especially if Moncrief starts off rough. Now, one thing I don't like is that today he was talking to reporters, and he was talking about his finger injury and that it's still lingering. To me, that sounds like excuses. He didn't use it as a crutch, but he brought it up, and they asked him about it, and he said, it's still bothering me.
Let me ask you, Jeff, did he volunteer it?
He didn't volunteer it, so no, he didn't do that. They asked him about it, and he said, it's still bothering me, instead of saying, no, my hand's fine. So it kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit, but nonetheless.
At least he didn't volunteer it. If he volunteered it, he's taking full out excuse mode. Exactly. He just answered the question. So, yeah, you're right. It's kind of that.
So going into week 2, my question is, how would you divvy up the labor at the wide receiver position? Would you change anything? Would you just go status quo and say it's only been one game, we're not going to have that type of reaction? What would you do in week 2?
I mean, my X and my Z receivers would be Moncrief and Juju, but my Y receiver, my slot receiver would be James Washington. I would limit my targets to Ryan Switzer. That's not because I don't think, it's because I don't think Ryan Switzer is a great football player. But I would also like to see some diversification in how they use James Washington. They're using James Washington about as creative as a toddler is with finger colors. It's like your toddler isn't Picasso. He or she is going to put the brush in the paint and just hit the paper. That's essentially what they're doing with James Washington. They're saying run 9 routes or go routes. That's it. No diversification, no nothing. All the stuff that you saw in the preseason, you don't see any of that. Hopefully they will be more diversified, more creative with how they use James Washington. Put the 3 best receiving threats on the field when you go to 11 personnel. Work Juju in the slot if you have to do that. Work him out of the slot. Let him be that piece, that Y piece that moves around. And you could play those other 2 guys on the outside. But the 3 best wide receivers need to be on the field, and that's Moncrief, Washington, and Juju.
Juju played a lot from the slot this past week, and that's something that I had been saying they should think about doing because that's where he does his best work. The problem is that in week 1 they had a defensive package ready for that, and so when Brandon was on earlier, he mentioned that if they move him to the slot, they could get some matchups that could be very, very productive for the Steelers offensively. So look for them to do that again. I agree with you about Washington. I want to see Deontay Johnson taking some snaps from Ryan Switzer. I have no beef with Ryan Switzer. It's nothing personal or anything like that. It's just that I think that Deontay Johnson, and I said this in the article, and you don't really understand it unless you watch it. But when you watch the L-22, he pops on the film. He's fast. He catches he had some really nice catches in the game. One over the middle that was high, corralled it with one hand and brought it in. I just think it's worth getting him out there and seeing what he can do. I feel like we've seen the best of Ryan Switzer, and maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he proves me wrong. But Lance, Deontay Johnson, your thoughts on him moving forward?
Well, let me ask you. Let me respond with the question.
Here we go again. Okay.
Yeah. As I said that, I was thinking about it like, man, I'm going to respond with a question. If Deontay Johnson gets more snaps,
yeah,
he's going to take somebody's snaps. You say Switzer.
So take the 10% that Johnny Holton got. Why is Johnny Holton on the field?
So if Deontay Johnson gets more snaps, are the 4 principal wide receivers him, Moncrief, Juju, and James Washington? And do they run more 10 personnel considering they didn't target the tight end until late in the fourth quarter anyway? So do you take Vance McDonald off the field and you concentrate and you deploy 4 wide receivers with the running back?
Yeah, I don't think you need to go to drastic measures here. I think they are going to target the tight end this week. I think Vance McDonald's going to be a big part of the game plan this week. But other than that, I mean, you could, but I'm just saying I want to see him get some reps. Johnny Holton was targeted on the first third down on a deep go route.
Yeah.
Do I need to say that again?
Yeah.
Johnny Holton, who 2 days before the game was on the practice squad, was targeted on a go route on the first third down of the first week against the defending Super Bowl champions.
Now let me ask you about the logic of that. This was a guy that got cut.
Yes.
And he's targeted on the first third down against that team up north in the first game in prime time. Why wasn't he on the 53 man? So like that stuff. There's at times there's stuff that happens that without having more information, it's hard to make a logical inference that it just doesn't make any sense. But when I asked about Deontay Johnson, is he going to take away Moncrief's or Washington snaps? Because I think that they're going to put Switzer in the slot. So whose snaps is he going to take away?
Well, if we're looking at past experience and that being week 1, it would take Moncrief snaps. And remember that Deontay Johnson can play both inside and out. He's not I has to play X or Z. He can play the slot. He can play outside. I just want to see something. That's all. That's all. Leaving the receivers to the side. Ben Roethlisberger. He said he had his Wednesday media session today. He talked about how the quarterback needs to be better. It's the only position that he talked about. Didn't talk about, they asked about receivers. He gave some answers, but in terms of being critical about play, he said, I'm only going to talk about the quarterbacks because that's what I control, and the quarterback needs to be better. When you look at Ben Roethlisberger's game from last week and then looking ahead to this week, where's your confidence level with Big Ben?
I need to look at the all 22, but it seemed like he was coming off of receivers pretty quickly and taking the underneath stuff. Like he wasn't trying to aggressively push the ball downfield. I don't know if he felt uncomfortable in the pocket. I don't know if he was seeing things clearly. I know friend of the program, Chris Carter, did an article for DK Sports talking about the offense and about Ben Roethlisberger's performance. It's hard for me to say, but he didn't seem like he felt comfortable, at least to me, pushing the ball aggressively downfield and really trying to attack the Patriots secondary. Because without watching it, we would believe the narrative that that secondary is the best secondary of all time, that everybody was sticky covered and nobody was open, and that's why he was taking the check down. But it's hard to know if that was really the case. But he did not look, he looked very passive in the game.
Yeah. He's gonna have to be better, but typically he is better at home, and it's the Steelers' first home game. The Seahawks coming to town. Lance, let's talk about some defense. Other than Tyler Lockett, if Brandon was running off those names of guys that are on the Seahawks, I didn't know any of them.
You're terrible.
I
Chris
didn't.
Carson is a rookie. It's not a rookie, but he's a young player. But Chris Carson is a guy that Steeler fans would like. He runs in a very physical fashion. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He's not too dissimilar to James Conner.
Okay.
But, Lockett, without Baldwin, and I was surprised that Baldwin wasn't there. I thought Baldwin was injured. Seattle Seahawk news it goes so far under the radar. When he said that Doug Baldwin retired, I was like, wow, really? I had no idea
You're
that
making fun of me for not knowing anybody. At least I knew that Doug Baldwin retired.
I had no idea that Doug Baldwin. Well, partly is because Doug is a Stanford guy, so I was probably ignoring it when I heard it.
Here we go. Pac-12 talk again.
Yeah,
So Pac-12 talk. So here's my question for you. I know you focus on defense mainly. Should the Steelers approach the Seahawks offense with a light linebacking core like they did primarily against the Patriots? I believe, I could be wrong, Devin Bush played about 72% of snaps. Mark Barron played about 69% of snaps, and Vince Williams played a balmy 30% of snaps. Clearly, they wanted the speed on the field. Clearly, they wanted Bush and Barron as the inside tandem. Is that something that you're thinking they might want to rethink in week 2, or is that something you think that they're going to stick with?
I think because Seattle really tries to run the football, and they try to run the football on the perimeter, and they try to run it in a variety of different ways, including some run action, some jet sweep stuff. I think Vince is going to get more snaps this week. I think it's going to be Vince and Bush as opposed to Barron and Bush. So I think Vince will play a little bit more. And when they go subs, and of course it'll be Barron, and I think they'll take Vince out. But they don't. I think Vince can survive in this game a bit better than he would going up against a team like the Patriots.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. What were your thoughts on Steven Nelson? That's a guy that we hadn't seen much in the preseason, free agent acquisition, the wealthiest free agent pickup they've had in Steelers history at that. What were your thoughts on his play in week 1?
I didn't think he was bad, but in looking at the game, I mean, we watch enough football. We should have known that for a new defense with a lot of new pieces, particularly with a free safety that was in the AAF that had not started a game, that there was no way in the world that the Steelers were going to go up there and win. You had too many interchangeable kind of new pieces. You had Barron and Bush in there. You had Cam Kelly in there. You had Mike Hilton playing deep safety at times. You even had Cam Sutton get more snaps than he's usually getting. And you had Steve Nelson. You had a lot of new parts. And a lot of new parts just aren't going to beat the Patriots. You need studs. You need guys that where the communication it's unspoken, where you've played so long with a guy that you can switch stuff off if you're in the wrong call. You can switch stuff on the fly, because the Patriots are going to challenge you cerebrally when you're playing defense. I'll give you an example of a play, and I think I sent you the picture. It was a Josh Gordon play when the Patriots were able to get Josh Gordon singled up against Vince Williams. That's a loss. I mean, at the snap, unless you get a sack, that's a loss. You are going to lose that matchup 100 out of 100 times. Vince Williams just can't win. There's no linebacker in the National Football League that can cover Josh Gordon one-on-one. To his right, you had Nelson. I'll guarantee you, if Vince and Nelson play together for several years together, and Nelson was defending Rex Burkhead, you just flop that. You switch that. Vince, you're on Burkhead. I'm on Josh Gordon. I'll play whatever the coverage call is on Josh. You play that on Burkhead. You have to switch that. And that's the type of defense that's going to match up well and play well against the Patriots. It's a defense that is very comfortable with its scheme, very comfortable with the calls, very comfortable with themselves, as well as have studs. I don't think Nelson played poorly, but I think the Steelers made a lot of unforced mistakes in this game that I think can be corrected and cleaned up.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. That's a good observations there. Crazy Chris 235, he puts $1.99 in the proverbial tip jar and says, "Will Vance the Lance McDonald show up in week 2?" What do you think about that? And by the way, there was someone earlier when we had Brandon from Field Goals on talking about the upcoming game that put $4.99 in the tip jar, but that comment has gone by so far. If you're listening now, still live, don't have to put the money in, but just redo the question and I'll make sure I get it up there. Lance, what are your thoughts on Vance McDonald or the tight end position this week?
Well, we have the theory, but that was more so under Todd Haley, right? So remember if people complained about the running game, Todd Haley would come out and run it like 6 straight times.
Yep.
I kind of think we're going to see Vance get targeted a lot in this game. Because I think it was so noticeable that Vance McDonald, who is not known as a blocking tight end, had no role in this game until it was blowout city. So I think you will see Vance incorporated more so in the offense.
I think it would just be smart. The one thing I noticed when I watched even just the first half of the football game was the Patriots were so aggressive at the line of scrimmage, and they were not giving free releases. They made Pittsburgh earn every yard, and it was if you like that style of football, it's ready for rally. It's also suffocating at times, and the Steelers looked like they were being suffocated at times. So I'll tell you what. Let's get into our predictions now. We've talked a lot about this upcoming game before we do a little Q&A at the end of the show. So, Lance, what are your thoughts? What's your gut feeling when it
I'm
comes
gonna have
to
you
this
go
week?
first. This year, I haven't had predictions in my head, so I'm doing my predictions on the fly. So go ahead, Jeff. You give your prediction as you might talk me into a prediction because I have a green shirt on, which is Seahawks green, by the way, and I also have black and gold on, so I might just pick a tie.
Is this like the college signing day where you're gonna pick a hat?
I do have a couple of hats in the back.
Okay. When I think of this game, it reminds me a lot of and I said on our post game show when they went up to Foxborough and lost in 2015, they came back. It just so happens they played an NFC West team, the San Francisco 49ers. Ryan Shazier went ballistic, and they crushed the 49ers. And that was when Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback of that team. I think also it was the same. It was a couple years before. It might have been 2009, actually. If you remember, they went to Philadelphia and got shellacked in week 1 or in the early weeks, and then they eventually came back, and I think they made it to the Super Bowl that year. So the Steelers under Mike Tomlin, believe it or not, are a very resilient bunch, and they're definitely a team that I think they're good enough that I don't think that week 1 was indicative of what this team is going to be in 2019. Lance, you may disagree with that, but for me,
no,
I
agree.
still think this team can be good, and I think they're going to get better. We all assumed that the offense would be able to click on all cylinders from the get-go, but why should we have when they didn't play together? And so they have to kind of get a feel for what this new offense is going to look like. The defense is getting used to like you said, the situation with Steven Nelson and Vince Williams. That stuff I feel like will be ironed out eventually. I didn't know the stat that Brandon brought up about how they're 1-10 under Russell Wilson when traveling on the road in the month of September. I think a 1:00 game for Seattle that's traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast is tough. I think the Steelers at home when they're pissed off is tough. I think the Steelers win this game. And if they're giving 3.5, give them the points because they're going to cover. I think the Steelers win this game. We'll say I think the Steelers score some points in this game, Lance. They only put up 3 last week. I think they put up some points. I'm going to say the Steelers win 27-17. I think they win by 10. 27-17. So a little bit lower scoring. That's under for those degenerates out there. That's under. But 27-17, Pittsburgh wins. They move to 1-1, and the fan base can just calm down a little bit.
It's terrible, Jeff. You took my score and my prediction, so I'm going to go 28-17.
You good? There you go.
Just so we're slightly different. When I look at, I think what gives me, where I think the Steelers win this game is Seattle's offensive line is bad. I mean, it's really bad. And I think right now, from a speed perspective, they can really handle, I think, Russ outside the pocket if Russ wants to run. I think they have players that can spy him. I think they'll do a solid job against their run game. And Lockett as a deep threat, no, he's a gadget type guy. I don't think he's great off play action. Now he can hit you there, but I think the Steelers defense can handle it. I think they can handle the running game of Seattle, and I think they'll really be able to get after Seattle's offensive line. Seattle's offensive line is really bad. DK Metcalf is a big play guy, but he's a rookie playing his first road game. I really think they can handle Seattle, and so I'm going to pick the game 28-17, and I think the Steelers do get to 1-1. But if Sean Davis does not play, I don't think they win the game.
That's interesting. So it's all on Sean Davis.
I think it's a ripple effect. Once he's not in the game, you have to put Cam Kelly in some certain situations. Then that takes Mike Hilton out of certain situations, and he has to play certain stuff. I think the young player is susceptible to play action. He made some really terrible plays. There was a play in the game where the Steelers are in quarters coverage, or cover 4, I should say, is another name for it, is when the 4 DBs play a fourth of the field. That coverage is designed to stop vertical routes. What do they get beat by? A vertical route by Philip Dorsett, who runs by Cam Kelly. And they get beat on a vertical. One route beat 4 defenders covering vertical routes. I don't know, so with Kelly was not playing and moving like a confident player. I don't know how much you coached that up. I think, Cam Kelly playing back there, I think is an absolute weakness for the Steelers. And I hate to say that so soon, but I don't think he's ready for prime time, to coin the phrase from Mike Tomlin. I think the Steelers should be in the market for a backup free safety, a veteran backup free safety, because at least Sean Davis stabilizes it. He's going to play the correct coverages, because on that play where they got beat by Philip Dorsett, he runs maybe 2 yards towards the line of scrimmage as if there was play action. There was no running back. There was no play action. There was no play action threat at all, but he still gets sucked up, and that's concerning. So, yes, the Sean Davis not playing, I think that has negative ripple effects on this defense.
Well, he was limited in practice today. He did practice, so that's good news. On that front, he did not practice at all last week, so maybe they're targeting this. I did want to say something, a little rant here, Lance, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
After the game, I want to say it might have been Ryan Switzer or Dante Moncrief. One of them talked about the loss in week 1, and they said how it was a humbling experience. It was humbling.
Humbling.
Yes. And I thought to myself when I read that, humbling, when you get humbled, it means that you're filled with pride and someone kind of brings you back down to earth. Why in the world would the Pittsburgh Steelers be brimming with pride right now? Not just now, but going into week 1. Why? Because you were 9-6-1 last year. You blew a 7-2-1 lead. You went through the most tumultuous offseason in franchise history, that you have so many unknowns on your football team. This tells me that this team was drinking the Kool-Aid before they even got to the first week. They were reading the press clippings. They were reading the articles online. They were listening to what people were saying, how they're going to be okay, and they got smacked in the face.
Which flavor, Jeff? Red or grape?
I always preferred red. That's just me. But still, I was like, humbling? What? Humbling? I just cannot believe that those words, maybe it was just the word that came to their mind. They didn't put a lot of thought into it. That is a possibility.
They should have said embarrassing.
Yes.
Embarrassing.
We were embarrassed. Humbled? What? No, you weren't humbled, because you shouldn't be all arrogant going into a week 1 game against the defending Super Bowl champions when they were unveiling their 6th Super Bowl victory banner, and it's still one of the best teams in the game. That's just that to me. I felt like banging my head against the wall because it's like you guys have to learn something. So maybe they did. Maybe that's what it took. Maybe getting your doors blown off in week 1 on national television in front of the entire world. Maybe that's what did it. Maybe now they know. And because this is pretty interesting, David DeCastro said today after practice, got a little chippy. They got a little chippy at practice, a little salty, as he said it.
Hopefully,
yeah.
To what you said, the doors got blown off. I'm gonna give you just a little bit of North Side 15233 lingo. We would say blew out instead of blown out. Their doors got blew off instead of like just to really emphasize it and say it incorrectly, grammatically incorrectly, like they got blew out instead of blown out. They got blew out, and yeah, I mean, I understand why they use the term humbling, but it was embarrassing. I mean, but I think the components are there because what the positive that I did see is they do have a matchup guy for Burkhardt or for is James White in Barron. They do have players that can match up to different guys. It's just how do you play it? But so they have chess pieces now that I think they can have match up to different people. But I think, and I'm going to give Colbert a little bit of a pass. I think when you put Cam Kelly in and with the new pieces, he kind of had to play it really close to the vest. They played the Patriots from a defensive game plan perspective much differently last year in the 17-10 win. Because think about it. You have Burnett, veteran safety guy. And you have Sean Davis. You have 2 more experienced secondary people on the field. Like they couldn't play crossers. Like they could not play crossing routes. They just could not do it. They could not pass it off. Any crossing route that went at Devin Bush was a completion. They just could not pass these routes off. Whereas when you have more experienced guys, they line up at the proper depth, they communicate, they don't have to pass off routes. This was the worst matchup for a defense with a lot of new pieces, was to go up against a guy like Tom Brady. But in a lot of instances, it wasn't Brady's brilliance. It was, they just made it pretty easy for him. And that's not his fault. If you make it easy, well, by golly, thank you. I'll take that. Thanks. But they made some things very easy for him to pick apart, and he wouldn't be Tom Brady if he didn't absolutely abuse them for it.
So you think this week 2 is a get-right game? That's what I used to call it as a coach. We need a get-right game. We need one of these games.
I think it has the potential to be a get-right game. I think with that offensive line in Seattle, it has the potential of being a game where they're walking away with 6 sacks, and they're really getting after Russell Wilson. Because you watched that game, they were getting after Russell Wilson that entire contest.
Dunlop got to him a lot.
I mean, when you get hit when you take 4 sacks and another 9 additional quarterback hits, I mean, and there were a lot of plays where Russ was doing his magic and escaping hits and or sacks. So there was a gang of pressures. I would anticipate he got pressured on probably every third throw.
TJ Watt playing is going to be huge. And if he can't play and they put Anthony Chickillo out there instead of Ola Adeniyi, because Ola Adeniyi is by far the better pass rusher, I might lose my phone because I might throw it against my wall. It would be the dumbest decision they could make. So to me, Chickillo is just he's just a piece of the puzzle.
He's just a chick, yo.
He's just a special teams guy. I did want to, someone asked in the live chat earlier, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Your thoughts on Joshua Dobbs being traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 5th-round draft pick in 2020.
Hobbs?
Yes, Hobbs.
Hey, whatever you could get for him.
They got a 5th-rounder, man. It could be an early 5th-rounder, too.
Well, I don't get excited about 5th-rounders. But, hey, anything that you can get for Hobbs, it's a great deal.
So you got to remember that you got to look at draft picks as ammunition,
as
and you can pair them
money.
together.
Yes, as money.
So you
They're
trade. We'll
currency.
give you our second and that fifth that we got from Jacksonville.
Right. You are correct. They are currency.
Yes. So
Yes.
and this is a quarterback that's going to be in street clothes all year, and even at that, I think that if you're going to trade him, you get anything for him. And that's
He's going to
plus.
be their backup day because Fultz got hurt.
Foles is out
Foles got hurt,
for
and
6 to 8 weeks or something like that.
I don't. What's the new guys?
Minshew.
Yeah. He's the starter. So
got a heck of a mustache.
How about a quarterback room of Minshew and Dobbs? So that's a.
Well, and here is the big news, because all this news came at the same time, and then Kevin brings up, wait, we got rid of Skipper. Well, yes, they did get rid of Skipper. They got rid of Skipper. They cut him. They waived him when they brought up Johnny Holton from the practice squad. I guarantee you they played what I call roster roulette, where they were hoping that he would clear waivers and that he'd be able to be put on the practice squad, and he didn't. The Giants picked him up, and the fan base was livid. Absolutely livid that Tuzar Skipper is not with the team. So there you go. There you have it. Anything to add, Lance, before we call it a show?
No, but definitely the sun is still shining. The sun is still shining, in Pittsburgh. What's that show about Philadelphia? Well, you don't watch TV.
It's always sunny in Philadelphia.
Ding, 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 ding. So that might be the title of my new. Yeah, I said it. It's always sunny in Pittsburgh. If
it's
they
not
don't
always sunny in Pittsburgh, you know that, you live there.
Absolutely, it's not always sunny. Neither in Philadelphia, but it's always sunny in Pittsburgh unless they lose in week 2.
Let's pretend that doesn't happen. So, who's their week 3 opponent? Oh, they go to San Fran. Are you going to that game?
I'm not sure. I'm still trying to work it out. I mean, you know me. I've
said your wife is a 49ers fan.
Yes, I mean it might just be a snack. Go to the sports bar game and something like that. Because I'm at a point, man. I've seen every type of football game possible. Like the only thing I really want to go to is a Super Bowl. I've been to the AFC Championship game. I've been to a regular playoff game. I've been to games on both coasts in simultaneous weeks. I went to the Cleveland Brown game where Ben Roethlisberger got absolutely destroyed and where Colt McCoy got killed by James Harrison. That I thought he was going to get arrested for assault for how hard he hit him. And that's the game where they put Colt McCoy back out on the field after he was puking and had a concussion on the sidelines, and his dad threatened to put hands on people in Cleveland. Then I watched him play San Francisco after the bye week for the blackout game. So I've seen a bunch of games. So
you were at Candlestick when the lights went out.
Yeah, I was at Candlestick when the lights went out. I've seen a bunch of games. I've seen I saw the Halloween game where the Steelers beat the Patriots. I mean, I've seen a bunch of different games. So regular season games don't do much for me. I'm Super Bowl or bust at this point.
There you go. Well, seldom seen asked. He puts $2 in the tip for what picks did we get for Joshua Hobbs, as Lance calls him, and that is just a 5th round pick in the 2020 draft. So that's next year's draft. He was drafted in the 4th. They're getting a 5th for him. Whatever. Okay, so make sure you tune in to the rest of our shows. So here's what the lineup is. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, is the Steelers preview. Myself, Dave Schofield, and Brian Anthony Davis. And then either Friday or Saturday will be the Steelers burning question, or Lance says, yeah, I said it. We'll figure that out. And then Sunday, we'll be on after the game. It won't be really, really late at night for me on the East Coast, so that's the thumbs up for me. The Seattle Seahawks and Pittsburgh Steelers. Lance and I will break that down in our Steelers post game, but we will see you all next week right here on Wednesday night as we preview the game with the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara. Lance, why don't you send us off?
Tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.
Amen, brother. We'll see you next week